All right, so here's how you put together the ToolLifter. Start by putting in some M4 inserts. You can actually put them in either side. I put mine in the back so that they would pull into the plastic and not pull through, but there's not that much stress on them, so it doesn't really matter. These holes are going to be through holes for mounting it. Make sure this is nice and clean with no bumps, this little inner race here. The same thing here, make sure this is clear with no bumps. So the way this gets assembled, two more M3 heat insets for the servo mount, and you can see that it kind of lines up, this little wall here lines up with that, and so that gets mounted in. I used M320s, and those are, if you use anything a little bit longer, there's actually room to put 25s in there, and it goes into plastic, so it would become a lock nut basically. But again, there's not that much. Just a snug fit is plenty for the servo mount. So this goes into the droid. This goes into the bread pan door. So you want the extended part, that axle, inside the droid so it gets mounted flush like that. So set it down here. Then you want 12 6mm bearings. I just happen to use plastic BBs because they're readily available, and you can see I'm putting this in a place where the BBs are somewhat corralled, so when they get dropped or pushed around they don't get lost. Just kind of dump them into the center of the bearing, and then use something to kind of coax them all to one side. And then you just will kind of cajole them into position. You want them to jump up onto that center curved part, and you just apply slight pressure this way as you kind of wiggle the bearings. And give it a little twist. Eventually they'll all behave themselves and it'll snap up into position. But what you can't have is any bearings on the far side, because you're taking advantage of the fact that it's eccentric right now, and there's more room, enough room for these bearings to can do that magic trick of popping up onto the race with just a little bit of pressure and a little bit of a twisting. So if you get one that is a runner like that, make sure you push it back in, because you will not be able to get it in once all the bearings are in the track. So again, just a little twisty, and this can be a little bit frustrating. Oop, there we go. Got a runner. But eventually this will work. And you'll feel it kind of pop into position when it actually is seated in there. Giving it a little bit of a turn and a twist. I'm getting pretty close. Oh, there's one out, that's why. I haven't quite perfected my bearing assembly technique. So sometimes it goes quickly, sometimes there's a little bit of a fuss period. So you might see a little, oops, bumped the camera, sorry about that. A little fiddly. Really close. Think I got it. All right, so As you can see, that's going to be just a little bit of a challenge to get that in there, but once you get it in, once you get bearings on opposite sides like this, it's in a good position to not fail. So once you have that, carefully put the cage underneath. You can put on either side, it doesn't really matter. Let's put on this side so that you can see better. There's not going to be a shadow. Oop, oop, oop. Don't let them loose. So I'm going to use the cage to prevent the bearings from sliding out of position inadvertently. So what I want to do is just pick one ball and move it around until it drops into one of the positions on the cage. And I'm not really using the cage, I'm not pushing in, I'm just kind of using it as a guide to choose the position of where the bearings go. All right, so my bearings are all over the place now. Let me see if I can just start it a little bit better by doing some spacing, some pre-spacing. So what I'm trying to do is, as each bearing comes by, to sort of like capturing it or letting it sit in one of the little divots. You don't want to have any empty spots, so. All right, that's a pretty good start. So this one will go here, 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 excuse me. There, we'll bring this one over to there. And once they get all in a position, it'll want to snap right in. Just make sure you don't have any empty spots or two on one. Getting pretty close. I think that one goes there and this one goes here. And then you can see once they're all in, you have a nice bearing. So hopefully you didn't put it together backwards. This thing is facing the wrong way, but in this case, it's all correct. So next we're going to mount the servo. At this point, it doesn't really matter where it's at because it's running a circle. And I just used these short, 3/8 of an inch wood screws or sheet metal screws, and go straight into the plastic with them. So I'll grab a nice handy dandy Phillips bit. You can use any kind you want. I just had these on hand. And there's starter holes here in the mount. So that's just one. And then two. Try not to drill your own holes. Make sure you, because my starter holes, the printer kind of clobbered it with a little bit of element split, so you get a, in fact what I'm going to do, since I don't have my little hand drill near me, I'm going to pre-start them so the holes are a little bigger and easier to see. So you can catch that. Because if you make your own new holes that are near it, your servo will be mounted crooked. And you don't want that because that'll make your gear run crooked and the whole thing will get wonky. All right, I like that. Like I was saying, the holes are actually bigger in the print, but the elephant's foot on the printer cause these top holes to get a little bit closed. We just want to make sure we're bullseyeing them when it's time to mount the servo. So the servo goes with the wire facing up. Another mistake you can make is mounting the servo upside down. You'll figure it out because it won't go together the wrong way. And the other mistake you can make is mounting the servo on the wrong side of the board. So the servo goes on the back with the gear on the other side. Sorry, it's black plastic with a black servo. The lighting's not great, but I find that when I'm printing with 3D printers, I get good results with this black. And you don't really care what color it is, you just want something consistent. And so all my printers are dialed in with this filament. Somehow that's missing the hole. There we go. Anytime you're assembling anything that's 3D printed with multiple screws, get them all started. Don't ever fully seat one screw, because as you can see, it's got this kind of cone in it, and that helps center it. So you don't want to get it at again a weird angle, because you picked the screw and you tighten it down, and then it twists your work. So once they're all started, kind of work in a star pattern so you don't develop a twist or some kind of unnatural bias to one screw over another. And with all things 3D printed, the metal's going to beat the plastic every time. So just take out all the slack, make sure it's snug and there's no gaps in the screw. You can see right now that servo is not flat, so we don't want that. We'll just take out all these gaps. And then that servo will be, excuse me, properly mounted. I know this is compelling video, watching screws get turned, but it's part of the process. All right, so no wobble in the servo, and it's mounted square. So we are ready to proceed to the next part. The nice part about this particular design, as I mentioned earlier, is that you can remove this servo and replace it without taking it off the device. So if you did need to remove the servo, these two screws are all you need to do. And voila. All right, so the rest of it is the same assembly as the other video I made, and you can just refer to that for the final assembly of this new ToolLifter mount.